Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual tabling, the first one of May. And today we're going to kick it off with food and kitchen safety. So without further interruption, let's get started. So the first tip I have for you is to always wash your fruits and vegetables. This is to get any sort of dirt or grime that's kind of on them, like what, that kind of appears before, you get, well, or before you get them at the store. So make sure you wash it with clean water without soap. And you don't want to wash meats in this way. If you wash like raw chicken or raw beef or something like that this way, it actually spreads all the germs that are out, on that meat, all over the sink and all over the countertop. So it's just something you want to avoid. Next tip I have is to cook your meat at the right temperature. And this is to ensure that you kill off all the harmful bacteria, of course. But it's important to note that not all meats are cooked the same way, or you can cook them to different temperatures. So beef and pork you can cook to about 145, so long as it's not ground. And this is because all the harmful bacteria tends to live on the surface of the meat, and it doesn't necessarily penetrate deep into it like it would with poultry, or like chicken or turkey. That rule doesn't apply if the meat is ground, because then you start to intermingle all of the outside portions and the inside portions, and so it's all scrambled up, and so then you do have to cook it at 165 like you would with turkey or chicken. And then here's just a handy little chart that shows like the different cooking temperatures. So here for fresh pork or fresh ham, 145. Same with beef, but then with poultry 165. And then even things like egg dishes, you want 165, and certain seafoods you can cook to 145 as well, similar to beef or pork. And then you want to avoid cross-contamination. So make sure that you frequently wash your hands with soap and warm water, but also use separate tools for your produce, raw meat, and cooked meat. So make sure you're not cutting raw meat on a cutting board that you're using for produce. And similarly, you don't want to necessarily use a knife without cleaning it at least. If you're cutting produce, then you go to start cutting raw meat, and then you start going back to produce. So you want to make sure that you either use separate tools or make sure you clean them before when you're cooking with something new. Another thing you want to make sure you to do is to store food properly. So first, if you cook something and then you let it sit out, of course, for your meal or whatever, just make sure you store cooked food within 2 hours after cooking it. And you want to store it in airtight containers. Glass and metal are obviously kind of the better ones, but plastic will do as well. And then you want to make sure that your refrigerator is below 40 degrees and that your freezer is below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is to make sure that none of the bacteria that might be present in the food is able to multiply. And then another tip I have for you is practice good knife skills. First thing you want to do is to make sure you don't rush and use a knife slowly. If you look at my fingers, you can tell that I don't necessarily follow that advice, but just make sure that you do. And it's also nice to keep your first aid kit in handy just in case you do, get like a little nick on your hand or your fingers or something like that. Another thing to kind of to help avoid with, cutting yourself with a knife is to cut away from yourself towards the cutting board. Don't try to hold anything in your palm and try to cut it in half. Make sure you're cutting it on the cutting board, and always keep your fingers behind the blade. And this, again, that's just to make sure that you don't cut your fingers. Also, if you're cutting things that are round, like maybe you're cutting like a potato or something like that, you can cut a little sliver off of the side just to make like a flat surface, and that way you can lay the potato on that flat surface, and you have a nice stable surface that you can cut with. Another tip I have for you is to be mindful of the stove. So of course, the stove can get very hot. So make sure you keep pot holders and towels away from the burners, or else they might catch on fire. And also keeping pan handles turned inwards. I know I've ran into this myself almost, where I bumped into a pan because I didn't I wasn't necessarily paying attention, and because I didn't have the handle turned inward, it almost fell off the stove and got hot food everywhere, which isn't good. And then make sure you turn off burners as soon as you're finished with them. So don't let them just going on, even if in a few minutes you have to put something back onto it again. Just make sure you turn it off. If you have a slow stove, it will heat up because it was hot before, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue there. And then trying to use vinegar to clean. So one of the nice benefits about using vinegar is it's non-toxic, and it can actually kill harmful bacteria such as E. coli or salmonella. However, it is important to note that it does not kill viruses, so it's not antiviral. But it is nice for, if you're cooking with raw meat, rather than spraying some sort of like pretty heavy duty cleaning spray on like a cutting board or on your pans or something like that. It's nice to just use this vinegar, like vinegar and water, to kill off those bacteria, and it's not gonna, produce all that chemically smell. Just the vinegar smell that it does dissipate within, within like a half hour at most. If you do want to try this out, you can use just a mixture that's half vinegar, half water. One thing you can do too is to try infusing it with citrus peel, and this gives it like a nice lemony kind of scent to it. So it kind of cuts back on that aggressive vinegar smell and makes it a little bit more pleasant. And so that is all that I have for you today. As always, let us know if you have any questions. You can comment below, or else you can email us at healthpromotion@glick.net. And so I invite you to this Thursday, where we will be resuming our harvest of the week, and where I won't ruin the surprise what we will be showcasing. So you'll just have to stop in on Thursday. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.